Well, my name is Melissa Johnson Camacho. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked at UC Davis since 2008. So I want to first say thank you for having me to this meeting. We've been having a lot of construction and a lot of parking issues. So I don't want to I want to make it clear that I'm speaking from the perspective of the workers and the union coalition that has been working on this parking issue. So if you have questions specific to UC Davis and their plan for parking, I would not be the person to ask, just so you know. But you're welcome to write those down, and we can try to follow up if you need to, if we can. But I mostly reached out to the neighborhood association because one of our members brought up that this parking situation extends out to the neighborhood, much like many people had talked about. I live in Davis, so I commute. But since I've started working at UC Davis, the parking has become impossible. I have emergency room nurses that look for sometimes 2 hours for a parking place. So that's probably why you're seeing more and more people in your neighborhood desperate, looking for parking, trying not to be late to work so that we can go, I don't know, save lives and stuff. So the big problem I see is that now we have a situation where people are paying for parking permits and there's just not enough parking. They closed 232 spots this last month. That really what made already an impossible situation even worse. And then as they are pivoting to more in-person instruction, work, classes, meetings, that has added to the situation. After months, probably almost a year of frustration, our union recently what we call in the union a march on the boss. So we actually went into the North Addition where many admin people work because we had been going to meetings for months and months, trying to come up with some like reasonable solutions. For example, offsite parking, virtual classes, even, some people had brought up using Lyft. That's not something from a union perspective I can support, but I mean, we're really open to ideas. But I really thought it was important when one of our members brought up going to the neighborhood association. I felt like that was really important, and something that maybe there's some ideas that come from the community that we can help push on our part, and as well as keeping the neighborhood in communication that we are as workers probably as frustrated, maybe sometimes more frustrated than maybe even the community members that see this dumpster fire that is parking. So I guess that's why I'm here. And that was just kind of like a recap of what we've been going through since the action took place. We have had some movement on some solutions that I'm hearing about. For example, an offsite, like almost like a park and ride in Elk Grove is one of the things that I'm hearing about. And we're excited to hear about that, as well as they have offered a couple of new spots that have small amounts of spaces. Unfortunately, for most of the people in my bargaining unit, which are nurses, we work 7 to 7. So the safety, for example, lighting, theft of catalytic converters or even vehicles, and then some violent actions that have taken place in this area it makes it really difficult when you have to walk so far after 13 hours of work on your feet to try and go back to your car and find it either gone or tampered with, so you're unable to even use it. And so we do really hope that we can find some more solutions. I think that I don't think that the university is like intentionally trying to make parking this difficult. I think that in a quest to make access and more appointments and more patients get seen, just the infrastructure on how the workers are actually going to get to work seems to be missed. And that's what we're seeing as far as the workers we've talked to. So that's kind of a quick recap. And if I missed anything, feel free to ask any questions. I hope that was thorough enough.
I have one question. You're talking about people actually can't get paid parking?
Yeah,
because I know that my husband goes by and sees the new parking garage and he says it looks like it's never full. So my question is whether you're talking about people looking for free parking or people paying UC and still can't find a spot, which is crazy. That's what it sounded like you said.
No, that is correct. And people, a lot of the people look in that parking structure and they see that too. They have a different tier of parking permits at UC Davis. So the new parking structure is actually mostly D permits, and those are not first come, first serve. The B permits, which is also paid as well, are first come, first serve. And people are finding that they are looking like even more than 2 hours to come to try to find even a paid parking spot. One of my nurses the other day was coming in for jury duty, so she was on a modified schedule. She actually came at 6 a.m, even though she wasn't scheduled till 8 a.m, so she could sit in the cafeteria for 2 hours because she knew if she came at 8, there'd be nothing to find. So people are really kind of donating hours of their life that they'll never get back. And I think after COVID, we've all kind of gotten to this place where we're like really reflecting on what's important in our lives. And people are like, I don't want to spend my life looking for a parking place just to come to work. When I go home, I
So
want to
what's the difference? What's the difference between the B and the D?
you
And
pay
would
a
you
little
talk
bit
about this?
more, but also there's no, that you have an almost a guaranteed parking spot with the D permits, but they limit those. So not everybody can get a D permit. They recently had a lottery where they had, I think, 250 D permits that became available. They had over 1,000 people apply. So
yeah, I used to work for the state, so I know it was
yeah,
competitive. I didn't drive, but it was very competitive to get in a state garage because otherwise 10 years ago it cost over $100
yeah.
to park.
Yeah, we're looking at I mean, I have it, I'm lucky in 15 years, so I did pay for the D permit, but I joked around and said it's going to be one of those generational wealth things that I give to my children and my grandchildren. I'll hold on to my D permit till I die. I'll put it in my will.
Melissa, do you know about how many parking spaces are missing? I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking about that need to be so people can come and park? And are you talking patients as well as employee or just employees?
I can only speak to employees. I can't speak to patients, but I will say that many employees desperate to find a place will go to employee parking. And so we had a member of a different union actually talk about her housing became in jeopardy because she ended up accruing $1,000 worth of parking tickets because she was so desperate to find parking. And in order to get her car back, she paid that $1,000 and then got an eviction notice. And this is like a worker that actually pays their parking, comes directly out of their paycheck. So it's really impacting people on a lot of deep levels. And so I can't really speak to employee parking, but I mean to visitor parking, but mostly employee parking is what I'm talking about. And the last time we had a meeting with labor relations, which is like kind of the legal arm of who we talked to in management, they said that it was kind of hard to estimate the number. And that's because we have so many employees that are parking out in the community that we actually don't even know how short we are. But I'm told by at least 9 o'clock, it is pretty difficult to find parking. There's a new app. It's called JAPA, GAPA. And you can even download it on your phone if you want to kind of just snoop and see how bad the parking gets. But it tells you how many parking spots there are at any given time. The problem is that the app is pretty inaccurate. And then again, you're kind of in that first come, first serve. So it may look like there's a parking spot in an area and then you get there and it's already gone because somebody just happened upon it. So it's pretty hard to know exactly how short we are. But I know that the loss of the 232 spots that just kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I was wondering what
Yeah,
do you think?
Deborah was, I guess Maggie first. She had her, oh, you're the president, Maggie, you run the meeting.
No, I don't have the agenda. I'm like, I'm
okay.
barely, yeah.
You're barely here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in Redwood Valley and the connection is not great, but so,
And Deborah, you're
the-
next.
yeah, anyway, my question was just what, obviously it is a problem for our neighborhood. I mean, we had heard that they were talking about renting spaces other places. I don't know if there are lots at Light Rail because obviously 39th Street Light Rail is very close. But what do you think we can do as a neighborhood association to help the situation in terms of advocacy or, I mean, we don't want people parking in the neighborhood because people live here can't park here. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think any pressure that you can apply in your networks is going to be extremely helpful because, unfortunately, it just feels like to many of the workers that as many times as we're, it shouldn't be this hard to come to work and find a parking place. I mean, we just want to come to work. And I think we're just kind of coming to the neighborhood to just hear from the community. If you have any ideas, any pressure that you can apply to people that, have decision-making power would really help. Even the last action that we had, we demanded to speak with some of the leadership at our hospital. And I was personally like threatened to get out. That they were going to look on camera and see if I make sure I was on my break. I mean, it was pretty threatening response. And then we requested a meeting with people who could make decisions, and that those people never even showed up. And so our ask is that at least, if you're going to make decisions about how our day was going to go, I mean, my argument is always that, I mean, parking has the ultimate power in our day. That makes our day, that makes or breaks like how you feel throughout your whole shift. And at least look us in the face when you're making these decisions is my ask. So having a meeting with those leadership people would be great. But I feel like maybe there's an area here as far as how many times you're seeing these people park in your area. So that we can at least get an idea of like how many spaces we're under. I mean, that was an interesting topic that came up, and I was thinking, well, how would we get that data? I don't really know, unless we just solicited from our staff, I guess.
Somebody would have to walk through and count. I mean, we have people now that buy motorized scooters. They come right around the corner from me, pull it out of the trunk and ride to UC. Some of the others are exercisers and they walk. But down my end of the neighborhood, I live near 54th and V. People are coming all the way down there now. And if you go down 53rd, 52nd, there's a whole bunch of streets. It's 53rd and 52nd between V and 2nd Avenue. It's just solid parking lot. Nobody can park their own cars on the street anymore. It's just everybody comes in. You can tell they're all going to work or coming back from work. Most of the cars on the street around the whole neighborhood, solid probably mostly.
I was going to say there are, I don't know whether Robin Kelly Dunton is still on. She's with McCarty's office. So she, as you mentioned, wanted to talk to other contacts. And I think Laura from the Nisnik Williams from the UC Davis is on too. So I don't know whether either one of them can address the concerns.
I put my information in the chat, so you're welcome to write me an email and let me know what your ask is, and give me some examples of what you're talking about so I can go ahead and pass that information along. So yeah, please reach out to our office.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And this is Laura. I'm happy to ask our manager for parking services, our director, to come speak to this group about the different parking implementations that are happening. So if that's something that you would like in the future to understand everything that's going on, I'd be happy to arrange that for you. Just let me know.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that was more directed
Go
to
ahead.
your group, not necessarily to ours. We've talked to the.
Well, I
parking
think it needs to
director,
be
but-
direct. Yeah, I made that comment based on that Melissa wanted to raise this to other levels. And, you know, I mean, I think people know what our neighborhood issue is, and the problem, the who's going to solve this problem is the campus, not us.
Deborah, did you get to ask your question?
I had a couple questions for Melissa, maybe, because I never heard of the D. I've seen the B parking permits. Melissa, do you know, out of those 232 spots that were closed, were they B or D? Because it sounded like B is guaranteed, if I understood it correctly, and a D, as in dog, is not guaranteed, but they're designated spaces somewhere.
Yeah, Deborah, it's just flipped, just what you
Oh.
said, but it's just the D as in dog is guaranteed. And the B as in boy is the one that's first come, first serve. And the 232 spaces, I'm not sure if there was some Ds in there. Usually there's like a few D permits sprinkled in. Majority of those were B permit spots.
Okay, and what kind of money are we talking? Are these monthly passes, or how does that work for an employee?
Right now, there's some of us that choose the monthly pass, and most of those people are probably going to be the D permit holders. But I think I think that there's an area where maybe there could be more parking if people had the daily permits. And so there's actually a daily permit through Park Mobile, and I don't use it, so I'm not totally familiar with it, but considerably cheaper than to incentivize more people to use the daily permit. I think if, as far as the D permit goes, that I don't think it would help much, but I think most people either interchange the B permit or the daily permit. Workers kind of intermingle with those. I don't have solid numbers on who's who on that. I just know the D permit, there was a 10-year waiting list on the D permit, and then they had that lottery, and now it's closed again.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
What
And
I
Deb-
don't understand, and what I'd love to hear from administration is, it seems like there must be some sort of formula. How many employees do you have? You know, what normal percentage of people to come to work at what time, and you use cars. I don't understand it. Why they should know how many, more or less, how many parking spaces are needed to allow their employees to come to work. But so what did we figure out? Maggie, why don't you take over? What are we figuring out that we can do here? We can contact.
Well, I think that, I mean, you know, I think that it would be good for Melissa to contact Robin Kelly Dutton, and her email's in the chat, and Laura as well. I mean, I think, and I don't know, I mean, I guess we could send people out to try to count how many cars are in the neighborhood. But it does, I agree with Patricia, it does seem like there should be a formula. I just want to say, does anybody else have any questions they want to say or comments before we probably close this and move on? I know there's a number of.
I do agree with Patricia that if they're selling so many first come, first serve permits, they should have some idea how many spaces there are that line up to those permits on various days of the week. There should be some sort of census that they know about. So anyway, I just underscore Patricia's point that it seems like we're selling more passes than there are spaces, and then people are, running around and can't pay for a pass and can't park.
I mean, one thing we could do as the ENA, we can write to the UC and I mentioned McCarty's office because obviously he's in the state legislature and UC is state, and say, these concerns were brought to our attention. It's impacting us. And it does, I think when I talked to you earlier, it does seem a little odd that they're destroying parking spaces before they've replaced them. That seems, not a good way to go. So I don't know. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? So I think that's two things, and maybe you can put those in the note, Francesca, the ENA can do. And then go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just have a couple of a comment and a couple of ideas, but I have
Just before you do that, I want Maggie to repeat what you wanted me in the notes because I wasn't typing anything because this is being recorded.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just that the ENA would write a letter, addressing this to UC and to McCarty, but also Melissa's group should do the same thing. And I guess we could see about trying to count cars, but I don't know how helpful that would really be. Anyway, Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I have a deeper appreciation for the struggle that the Med Center employees are going through with regard to parking. I don't know if, okay, so I work at DOJ, and that's at 50th and Broadway. And we have a lot of extra parking now because people are working from home. And we used to really get parked full, and we would contract with EDD across the street, and they would provide parking. So I didn't know about Shriners. I have a friend that used to work for the Med Center. He used to park at Shriners. She had a space there. So I didn't know if those avenues have been explored. I think it might be, a lot of red tape going through Department of General Services and whatnot. But I know there's a bus that comes by the Mind Center, and there's people that who come in early, like before 6 a.m. I see them walking into my job. And so they'll park and then they'll get on the bus, and because we're like probably 20 minutes, easily a 20-minute walk from the main hospital. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Those are great. And Maggie, I
Yeah.
was going to say, I think it would be helpful maybe in the next month, or I don't know how the holidays impact us, having somebody, as Laura suggested, from the Med Center to come to a meeting and let us know what they're doing. Because for years, I mean, they have talked about these commuter vehicles, a bus from Elk Grove or from Rockland or Roseville. You see them all over downtown because the state employees use them. And what, if anything's happened with that? I don't know, see what they're doing and maybe see what they've explored for other rental spaces.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Can you just make sure that's in the note too, Francesca? I know this. Thank you. Well, is there anything before, I know we got started a little bit late, but before we move on to the rest of the agenda and close this out, anybody else have any other comments? So we'll do that follow up, Melissa, and I don't know if there's a way to count cars, but I mean, I'd say probably I've seen the streets as people, it's packed. So, Jennifer.
Yeah, I was just going to say a daily permit is $2.32 a day. So a lot of our hybrid and remote employees utilize the daily permit rather than paying for a B as in boy permit, which is I think around $39 or $40 a month. The D as in dog permit is around $100 a month. The university is already contracted with EDD. We've got parking spaces over at EDD, and they opened up some space over at the Broadway building. But as a supervisor manager at UC Davis, I know that is still not enough for the demand that our employees are facing. And most of my team is admin, so they're hybrid and remote. We're not nurses, as Melissa's underlining here. So just a couple of pieces of information.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add in? Jessica, are you wanting to talk? I see your mouth, but you're muted. Did you want to say something? Okay. All right. Well, we'll follow up with those things that I mentioned, and whatever the powers that be who are on this call can do. I mean, to me, it does seem a little crazy that somebody's racking up $1,000 in parking tickets and hasn't found another solution. So that's really unfortunate. But thank you for coming, Melissa and Jennifer and Laura, and you're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. But I think with that, we'll move on unless